The taxi's engine hummed a low, tired note as it pulled away, leaving Pandora alone at the edge of her grandfather's front walkway. The cold November air pressed against her cheeks, sharp enough to make her eyes water. She tugged her scarf tighter and closed the taxi door with a soft thump that seemed to echo louder than it should have. The old porch light flickered once, like it recognized her after too long, and the wooden steps creaked under her boots as she approached. Pandora had always loved this house. The chipped blue paint, the ivy crawling up the right side like it had stories of its own, the faint scent of cedar and old books drifting out from the cracked front window. This place had shaped her. Patient hands learning to carve ornaments in the workshop, careful eyes studying details the way other kids studied cartoons. It was the one spot in her life that never felt dangerous or loud. But today, something in the air felt wrong. The door opened before she could knock. Grandpa stood there, sweater hanging loosely off his shoulders, a softness in his expression that melted into concern the moment he saw her empty hands. "Pandora," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Where's the BMW I gave you?" His voice wasn't angry, just confused, worried. Like the question itself had weight he didn't want to place on her. Pandora opened her mouth to explain, but the words tangled in her throat. How could she even begin? How could she tell him the truth without hurting him? She didn't get the chance. "Well, Dad, she won't say it, so I will." A voice chimed from behind him. Too bright, too smooth, too rehearsed. Clarissa, Pandora's mother, stepped into the doorway, one manicured hand resting lightly on Grandpa's shoulder as if she'd been there all along. Her smile was the kind that hid knives behind pearls. "The car belongs to her sister now," Clarissa said, breezy, casual, as if announcing the winner of a raffle. Pandora agreed, of course. It was only fair. Pandora froze. The porch boards beneath her feet seemed to tilt. The cold crawled deeper into her chest. Not from the wind but from the shock of hearing her truth stolen out of her mouth. She felt the old familiar burn under her ribs, the one she got whenever someone else decided her life for her. Her mother spoke like she always did. Polished, practiced, claiming authority she had never earned. And as always, she didn't even look at Pandora when she spoke for her. She didn't need to. She was used to controlling the narrative. Grandpa's brow knit. His eyes flicked between the two of them. Pandora silent, Clarissa glowing with false certainty. The confusion in his face shifted into something else. Worry. Disappointment. A suspicion he hadn't dared voice yet. Pandora swallowed hard. She wanted to explain. She wanted to reach out. But the weight of that moment pinned her still, every memory of being spoken over settling heavy in her bones. And in that instant on his doorstep, she thought, everything quietly began to unravel. Most people think ornaments are simple, just glitter, glass, and glue. But Pandora always said each one carried a heartbeat. Her studio was proof of that. It sat above an old bakery, the kind of place where the floorboards complained with every step and the heater made a clicking sound like it was arguing for its life. Glitter drifted across the room in a soft haze, settling on her clothes, her hair, her shoes. She joked that it followed her home like a stray cat. But the truth was, she liked it. Glitter didn't ask for anything, just existed. Her world was small, deliberate. Every morning she'd unlock the door to her studio, inhale the scent of pine-scented wax and wood polish, and set out her tools. Customers always described her as patient, but Pandora never liked that word. Patience was waiting for something to arrive. She wasn't waiting for anything. She was careful. Careful with details, careful with her time, careful with the way she carried the weight of every responsibility handed to her. Sometimes without being asked, her family had always seen her as the reliable one. Clarissa, her mother, adored that word. Reliable. It meant Pandora could be counted on to fix things, to smooth things over, to say yes. It meant Pandora could be stretched thin, pulled tight, and still be expected to hold shape. Blair, her younger sister, never had that problem. She was the front-facing child, Clarissa's favorite phrase, an influencer with a curated smile and a growing platform. Blair didn't ask for responsibilities. She asked for opportunities. And she always got them. Their father, Rowan, quiet to the point of disappearing, avoided conflict like it owed him money. He'd slip out of rooms when voices rose, nod along to decisions he had no part in making, and later say things like, "Your mother means well," even when she didn't. Only Grandpa Edmund had ever seen Pandora without reaching for something of hers. He was the one who'd sit with her in his workshop, handing her small blocks of wood to practice carving, never correcting her unless she asked. He was the only one who understood that careful didn't mean timid. It meant intentional. It meant she noticed everything. The BMW had been his gift to her last year after she hit her first big sales milestone. He'd shown up at her studio with the keys in hand, proud in a quiet way that didn't need applause. "You've worked hard, Pan," he'd said. "You deserve something that makes life easier." But Clarissa had swooped in the moment she heard about it. "We'll keep it in the family," she declared, her voice dripping with a kind of sweetness that hit a blade. Pandora didn't understand what she meant at first, until she realized "we" meant everyone but you, and "keep it in the family" meant you don't truly own anything. Little things disappeared first. Her old laptop she'd planned to fix up, a camera she used for product photos, a ring that had belonged to Grandma June. They'd become shared, then borrowed, then simply gone. Every boundary Pandora tried to draw softened over time, worn down by Clarissa's logic and Blair's entitlement. By the time Blair started taking the BMW just for errands, the erosion wasn't even subtle anymore. Pandora noticed, but she didn't fight. Not yet. 500-word hook. Because when you're the reliable one, you learn to swallow discomfort the way others swallow air. Until one day it burns. Though when Grandpa asked about the BMW on his porch, confusion in his eyes, every uncomfortable memory of the past year surged up like a warning. I should have known then that something irreversible was already in motion. The dining room looked almost staged when Pandora stepped inside. Like a photograph someone had posed but forgotten to smile for. Blair sat at the far end of the table, her ring light already set up, its artificial glow bleaching her face into influencer perfection. Her phone rested in a small tripod aimed at her untouched plate, like dinner was just another brand deal waiting to happen. Clarissa moved gracefully between the kitchen and the table, her bangles chiming softly with each step, her voice warm and polished, as if she were hosting a talk show. Rowan sat beside Blair, hunched, eyes fixed on his fork, stirring vegetables he wasn't eating. Grandpa Edmund stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching the room with a quiet intensity that made Pandora's chest tighten. Clarissa noticed Pandora lingering by the doorway. Her smile brightened a shade too quickly. "Oh, good you're here. We were just talking about the car." Her tone floated on the air, pleasant and poisonous. "That car belongs to her sister now." Pandora blinked. The words landed heavily, as if Clarissa had just announced a legal fact instead of a theft. Blair didn't even look up from adjusting her ring light. "It's just logistics, Pan. You barely use it." She rolled her eyes. "Honestly, it makes more sense with my schedule." Pandora set her box of ornaments down on the nearest chair. "I barely what? That's not true." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with disbelief. Clarissa clicked her tongue gently, like correcting a small child. "Sweetheart, you hardly drive. Blair needs it for collaborations. She has events, photo shoots, brand deliveries. You know how it is." "I know how it is," Pandora said slowly, "because I'm the one who kept finding the tank empty." Blair scoffed. "That's dramatic." The room froze. Not visibly but emotionally. A subtle tightening, a silent warning. This was the family tableau Pandora knew too well. Blair dismissing, Clarissa controlling the narrative, Rowan pretending to be furniture, and Pandora trying not to drown in the undertow. Grandpa stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "That car. I gave it to Pandora. It was hers. Why is it being spoken about like it wasn't?" Clarissa smiled, the kind of smile people give right before rewriting history. "Dad, be reasonable." She agreed to share it. She said it was fine. Pandora's heart thudded painfully. "No," she whispered. "I didn't." Clarissa lifted her chin. "Well, you didn't object." Pandora stared at her mother. That sentence, "you didn't object," was a blade disguised as logic. It was how every boundary in Pandora's life had been erased. Not with permission, but with silence that Clarissa repackaged as consent. 500-word internal hook. And suddenly, sitting in that room full of carefully curated lies, Pandora saw the entire pattern. Every temporary loan becoming permanent, every, just this once, turning into it's always been this way. Every swallowed protest rewoven into a story where she had agreed. A quiet truth rose in her chest. She hadn't agreed. She had simply been outnumbered. Grandpa turned to Pandora. "Is that true?" he asked softly. "Did you say she could have it?" The question unraveled her. It mattered because he was the only one who had ever truly listened. The only one who had given her something without expecting her to give twice as much back. He wasn't asking for clarification. He was asking if he needed to step in. Pandora shook her head. "No, I never said that." Blair clicked her tongue and finally turned toward them. "Pandora, please. If you'd planned better, this wouldn't even be weird." The words hit harder than Blair expected. Not because they were cruel. Pandora had survived worse, but because they were casual, fruitless. Blair didn't even understand what she'd taken. Something shifted in Pandora then. A low, smoldering warmth she barely recognized spread through her chest. Anger. Not the explosive kind her mother feared, but a quiet, simmering burn that felt strangely steady. Clarissa opened her mouth to continue justifying herself, but Grandpa's gaze locked onto Pandora instead. His eyes didn't leave her face. He saw it, the shift, the hardening, the realization finally landing. He didn't say a word, he didn't have to. Because in that moment, standing in a dining room staged like a performance she never wanted to star in, Pandora finally felt something she hadn't felt in years. Certainty. For the first time in years I felt myself harden. And in that moment, still standing in the doorway, still holding a box of fragile ornaments against my ribs, I felt the first crack in the version of myself they had built. Dinner continued as if nothing had happened. That was the strangest part. The table looked the same. The food looked the same. Blair angled her phone for perfect lighting. Clarissa made soft, hostess-like comments about portion sizes. Rowan mumbled something about the weather. The conversation moved around Pandora like she wasn't there. Like she hadn't just been informed that something that belonged to her no longer did. Pandora chewed but didn't taste anything. Her mind felt wrapped in cotton, every sound slightly muffled, like the world had stepped 1 inch to the left and didn't bother putting itself back where it belonged. Only Grandpa watched her, not in pity, not in confusion, in awareness. His eyes followed her small movements, the way her hand trembled around the fork, the way she blinked too often, the way she kept pressing her lips together as if she were physically holding something in. He didn't say a word. But that was because he already understood. When dinner finally ended, Blair stood up and grabbed the BMW keys off the counter as casually as if they were her earrings. "I have a collab shoot tonight," she announced. "Don't wait up." Clarissa kissed her cheek. Rowan nodded. Pandora said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The rideshare arrived 6 minutes later. As Pandora stepped into the back seat, she saw the familiar taillights of her. No Blair's. Car leaving the driveway first, the door shut. The driver asked for her destination. Pandora gave the address automatically, then leaned her forehead against the cold window. The city streaked by in blurred lights, red, gold, white, each one reminding her of ornaments she could no longer see clearly. She felt numb. But underneath the numbness was something more dangerous. A truth she wasn't ready to name. By the time she arrived at her studio, her chest felt tight, her breathing shallow. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking like they were protesting her weight. When she pushed open the door, the heater was off, the air cold and sharp. This place, her refuge, didn't soften anything. Never had. It stayed honest, even when she didn't. The darkness settled around her heavily. And that was when the tears came, not soft tears, not polite tears. These were old, heavy ones, the kind that carried years of swallowing unfairness, of being reasonable, of being reliable. She slid down against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, and cried until her throat ached. It wasn't about the car. It was about everything. When she finally stood, her legs trembled. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater and walked to her workbench. Her laptop sat there, half buried under sketches and fabric samples. She opened IT first. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that her instincts were screaming. She pulled up her accounts, her credit card, her bank statement, her business expenses. The numbers blurred, then sharpened. A charge for a ring light, another for makeup hauls, subscription services she didn't use, a temporary loan to Blair for emergency content supplies. Another rideshare Blair had taken under Pandora's account. Then groceries, then clothing, then family expenses, which Pandora had never agreed to pay. Her stomach twisted. She scrolled. More charges, more withdrawals, more financial fingerprints that weren't hers. The total rose in the corner of the screen as she tallied each one. $2,900, $4,200, $6,000, $8, $750. Pandora gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. Nearly $9,000. Taken in pieces so small she hadn't seen the pattern until now. A quiet realization clicked into place, clean and sharp. I wasn't unreliable. I wasn't careless. I wasn't failing. I was being drained. Something inside her straightened. Finally straightened. She opened a blank document. To the top, she typed ledger of unauthorized use. Then she began listing everything. Dates, amounts, receipts, notes, screenshots. Record. Timeline. A truth carved in pixels and INK. By the time she finished, the studio was silent again. Heavy but clean. Her phone buzzed. A message from Grandpa. Come by tomorrow. We need to talk. His tone wasn't worried. It was ready. So was I. Pandora expected Grandpa's house to feel the same as always. Warm, safe, familiar. But when she stepped inside the next morning, something in the air felt different. The house wasn't quiet. It was dense, expectant, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Grandpa had opened all the curtains, letting the gray morning light spill over the wooden floors. The shadows looked sharper than usual, and the air smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. In the dining room, the table had been cleared completely except for two neatly organized stacks of documents. One was her printed ledger. She recognized the title she'd typed in exhaustion and resolve. Ledger of unauthorized use. The other stack was unfamiliar. Grandpa stood beside the table, glasses low on his nose, reading through her pages with slow, steady focus. He didn't skim. He didn't frown. He absorbed. Pandora hesitated at the doorway. Is it enough? She asked softly. He finished the page, set it down, and looked at her with clear, unwavering eyes. Pandora, he said, this isn't confusion. He tapped the papers lightly. This is consistent misuse. The words settled over her like a weighted blanket, not heavy but stabilizing. For the first time in days, her heartbeat steadied. Grandpa gestured toward the second stack. And these, he added, are mine. Pandora blinked. Yours. He nodded. I've been watching for a while. Quietly. He removed his glasses and folded them, placing them atop the papers. Your mother assumes I don't see what goes on in this family. She forgets that I raised her, and I know every pattern she hasn't changed. Pandora stepped closer, curiosity tightening in her chest. The documents were meticulous. Dates, withdrawals, overlapping charges made from shared accounts her mother controlled, even a few entries linked to Rowan's card that had been quietly reimbursed from Pandora's business fund. You've been tracking all this? Pandora whispered. For months. His voice didn't carry judgment, only certainty. Your family has been treating your work as a shared resource, not your livelihood. He straightened, shoulders firming with purpose. Today that ends. The sentence vibrated through her like a tuning fork. Not a threat. A promise. Pandora expected fear to rise in her throat, expected the familiar panic to tighten her lungs. But instead, a strange calm settled. Solid. Grounded. She wasn't walking into an ambush alone. She wasn't the quiet one in the corner this time. Grandpa saw the shift and nodded approvingly. I'll take the lead. You only need to tell the truth. Nothing more. She exhaled slowly. I can do that. He gave a small smile. I know. The doorbell rang. Pandora stiffened, but Grandpa simply moved toward the foyer with deliberate calm. She followed behind him, stopping just short of the entryway as the door swung open. Clarissa entered first. Her perfume too sweet, too insistent, filling the air before she even spoke. She offered a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Rowan trailed behind her, shoulders curled inward as if already apologizing for existing. Blair came last, phone held up, screen still recording like everything was content. They filed into the dining room, unaware of the quiet storm waiting for them. Pandora sat across from them, her palms flat against her knees, grounding herself in the wood grain beneath her fingers. Grandpa stood at the head of the table, the documents arranged neatly before him. He began without preamble. Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The moment he placed his hand on the first stack of papers, the room fell into a taut, vibrating silence. These, he said, sliding Pandora's ledger forward, are records of expenses charged to Pandora without her knowledge or consent. Clarissa gave a short laugh, sharp, brittle. Dad, please. These are misunderstandings. She's always been dramatic about money. Pandora's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. Grandpa had told her to speak only when necessary. He would lead. And he did that. He lifted the first receipt. This charge for $137. Blair's makeup haul. Charged to Pandora's card. Unauthorized. Blair flicked her hair back. I never asked her to do anything she didn't want to do. Grandpa didn't look at her. He simply turned the page. This $219 charge, ring light equipment. Again charged to Pandora. Again unauthorized. Blair crossed her arms. I told her I'd pay her back. Grandpa paused. Slowly. Deliberately. Then he looked up at Blair for the first time. Did you? His voice was calm. Too calm. Blair opened her mouth, and closed it again. Rowan stared down at his hands. Clarissa's smile cracked at the edges. Grandpa continued, flipping calmly through the pile, each rustle of paper slicing through the rising tension. Here are ride shares, clothing, shared utilities she never agreed to share. Nearly $9,000 drained from her in 1 year. And all of you called it teamwork. Clarissa straightened in her seat. This is family, she said firmly. We share. She never complained. If she felt overwhelmed, she could have said something. Pandora felt something in her chest flicker, something raw, old, and finally burning bright enough to break through. I did say something, she said quietly. All eyes turned to her. Pandora's voice didn't waver. I didn't complain because every time I tried to set a boundary, you called it selfish. Clarissa's eyes narrowed. That's an exagger. No, Pandora said, her tone soft but cutting. It's not. You told me sharing was expected. You told me privacy was dramatic. You told me saying no was ungrateful. She lifted her own stack of documents. Her hands were steady. I didn't have to make anything, Mom. You acted. I recorded. For the first time, her mother blinked, caught off guard. Rowan shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we can just sort this out fairly. As a family. Pandora turned to him. There's no compromise on my livelihood. The sentence landed with surprising weight. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was final. Grandpa nodded, lifting the second stack of documents, his stack. And that, he said, brings us to the next part. Clarissa's forehead creased. What part? Grandpa folded his glasses and set them down with a soft click. The family fund. Blair's eyes lit up, hopeful, greedy, unthinking. Finally, she said, exhaling dramatically. This is what we need to discuss. I have several opportunities coming up. It's being reassigned. Grandpa interrupted. Blair stopped mid-sentence. Clarissa's lips parted. Rowan sat up straighter, suddenly alert. Grandpa turned his full attention to Pandora. To her. Silence thundered. Clarissa shot to her feet. You're rewarding her for attacking us. No, Grandpa said coldly. I'm correcting years of imbalance. Blair scoffed. She doesn't need it. She has a hobby studio. Pandora's spine straightened. It's not a hobby. Blair waved a hand. See? She's being ridiculous. No, Pandora said, her voice low, firm. Ridiculous is thinking you can take from me because my work looks easy. Ridiculous is assuming my care is infinite. Ridiculous is calling theft teamwork. Blair flushed. Clarissa sputtered. Rowan stared helplessly at his lap. Pandora stood then, not out of anger but clarity. For years I've carried things for this family. Money. Favors. Peacekeeping. She looked directly at her mother. But what's mine is mine. My business. My accounts. My tools. My car. She took a slow breath. And my boundaries. Clarissa slammed her palm on the table. You ungrateful girl. Grandpa's voice sliced cleanly through the outburst. You raised her to be reliable, he said, staring straight into Clarissa's eyes. Not disposable. The room froze. Clarissa's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. No words emerging. Blair lowered her phone for the first time. Rowan swallowed hard. Grandpa turned back to Pandora, his expression softening with something close to pride. You did nothing wrong, he said. You've been taken from. And today, Pandora, that ends. Pandora felt her lungs expand in a slow, full breath, not from relief, but from reclamation. The version of herself they had built, quiet, compliant, endlessly giving, cracked again, wider than before, and this time, she didn't patch it. She let it fall. Grandpa placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and said the words that had been echoing since that doorstep moment. What I do next, Pandora, is because I'm proud of you. His decision stood. My boundaries stood. And for the first time I felt tall in a room that once made me small. The strangest thing about the aftermath wasn't the confrontation itself. It was the quiet that followed. For the first time in months, Pandora woke up without the weight of someone else's crisis on her chest. No incoming request. No, can you transfer me something? Texts. No last-minute emergencies masquerading as obligations. Just silence. Clean, unfamiliar, almost bright. It felt like stepping into a room where the air had finally been cleared. That same afternoon, she signed the lease on the corner studio she'd been eyeing for weeks. The landlord slid the keys across the desk. Metal tapping would like a ceremonial blessing. Sunlight flooded the space through floor-to-ceiling windows, landing on bare walls and cheap flooring that smelled faintly of glued. It didn't matter. To Pandora, it looked like possibility. 3 nights of moving. She moved in slowly, deliberately. 3 nights, 3 carloads, each trip a quiet reclaiming of the life she thought she'd lost. Grandfather insisted she let him help carry the heavier boxes, but he didn't fill the air with speeches or reassurance. He simply brewed tea in her empty kitchen, carrying his thermos like a grounding ritual, and sat beside her while she assembled her old shelving unit. His presence said what words didn't need to. You're not alone. You were never supposed to be. The shop felt skeletal at first, echoey, unsettled, but every time she taped a corner, wiped a counter, or screwed in a hook for her tools, the place anchored itself more firmly to her. By the 3rd night, she fell asleep on her mattress on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. When she woke up, she didn't panic. She didn't feel behind or overwhelmed. She felt settled. Blair's unexpected visit. The knock on the door came 2 days later. Pandora opened it expecting the mailman, maybe a neighbor, but there stood Blair. No fake smile. No dramatics. No excuses. Just Blair, holding a small ornament shaped like a glass crescent moon, the kind Pandora used to craft during holidays. I didn't know what you'd want for the shop, she said quietly. So I picked this. And I paid for it. Full price. She held up the receipt like a peace offering. No discounts. No favors. Just respect. For the first time in years, something unperformed passed between them. A real moment, not polished, not curated, not borrowed. Pandora hung the ornament near the window after she left, letting the afternoon light catch the edges. It cast a soft glow across the studio, like a beginning, Not a replacement. Mother's texts. Her mother's messages came more hesitantly than usual. We should talk. I didn't know you felt this way. You misunderstood. Family shouldn't keep score. Pandora responded with short, steady sentences. Not cruel. Not apologetic. I need space. I won't discuss finances again. Please communicate through Grandpa for now. Clear. Boundaried. Calm. She realized she wasn't seeking closeness. She was seeking clarity. And that alone was enough. Quiet nights in the studio, nights in the shop became her sanctuary. The hum of her tools. The reflection of the moon through the wide windows. The smell of sawdust and varnish settling into the corners. Every sound was her own. Every light she switched on was hers. Every dollar she earned stayed in her account, untouched. This simple peace felt like a luxury she hadn't known she was allowed to have. One evening, as she sat on the floor with a mug of tea, Pandora understood something she'd never had words for before. Loyalty wasn't blind. Loyalty wasn't unpaid. Loyalty wasn't her sacrificing while others took. Loyalty, real loyalty, was someone choosing you without the expectation that you'd bleed for them. And family? Family was whoever showed up with honesty. Not whoever claimed ownership over your life. Her grandfather's words echoed from that confrontation, now resting gently inside her instead of trembling against her ribs. Reliable. Not disposable. She believed it now. The final wisdom. Pandora taped the last moving box shut, flattened it, and leaned it in the corner. The studio finally felt complete. Bright, open, alive. She whispered the truth aloud, letting it settle into the wooden floors beneath her. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose who to let through. And this time the door was hers. If you've ever had to fight for your own space, your own voice, your own worth, tell me where you're listening from. If this story stayed with you, follow the channel so you don't miss the next one. Drop a door emoji if you've ever had to close a door to protect your peace. And share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing themselves isn't selfish, it's survival.